Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Monday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Is Dallas center forward Christian Wood worth trading for? That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. It's always going to be free. It's never going to be behind a paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to hang out and see the show. And more importantly, Andy, it's a place where you can go and join upwards of 20,000 subscribers, leave comments, talk to each other. Great conversations, Lakers conversations taking place on that channel. We want you to be a part of it. We want you to leave us questions and comments, all that good stuff, because we like to use it on the show. Even if we don't point you out personally, it is always inspiration for us to go ahead and do that. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a $100 instant deposit match up to $100, a 100% instant deposit match up to $100, I should say, with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. So we did not get to it on Friday, but Darvin Ham had some very high praise for Austin Reaves, which we'll discuss in this show. LeBron James is changing numbers again, but something familiar I think people will recognize. But let's start here, Andy. So would you agree with me, Andy, that Lakers Twitter on Sunday was pretty much dominated with this tweet from Sam Quinn at CBS Sports? So he says, news on the Christian Wood front via Mark Stein. The Mavs are open to participating in a sign-in trade. Not really a shock there. And I'm sure Christian Wood is too, because he's trying to get paid more than the minimum. Quinn goes on, though, in his tweet. My sense is that the Lakers would not value Wood high enough to go above the minimum or trade someone. However, the Lakers could go above the minimum by offering Jarred Vanderbilt. Again, Sam Quinn, Andy, not actually saying this is something the Lakers will do, are going to do, are exploring, but it got everybody talking. And I thought it was a really interesting thought experiment.
Yeah, I mean, it's newsworthy because the Lakers have been linked to Christian Wood by, among others, Jovan Buha from The Athletic. They're clearly on the lookout for another big. Rob Pelinka said as much on the record. It's most commonly been either Christian Wood or Bismack Biyombo that they've been linked to, unless, and I'm sure it'll come up sometime this week, if the Mavericks can't find a way to trade JaVale McGee, it has been expected that they will end up waiving and stretching him and having him become a free agent. We've had a few people hit us up on Twitter at Cam Brothers asking our thoughts on a JaVale, I guess, 2.5.0, because he did 2 seasons with the Lakers, then ended up getting traded. But for now, Christian Wood, I mean, that's where this becomes newsworthy, just because he's been linked, and the Lakers theoretically in this type of setup where they trade Vanderbilt for him, they'd be giving him essentially double the veterans minimum, which Wood could take or leave. I wouldn't do this. I would not even consider doing this at all. If it were an actual
right, and again, just I do this for Sam's protection. This is only this is how this could work, not again something the Lakers are planning on doing. But like you say, Andy, it got everybody kind of into that would you or wouldn't you, and you would not. Why?
No, because I think on this team, Jarred Vanderbilt's defensive versatility, the dirty work mentality and willingness, and the Lakers being more stacked from guard to small forward than small forward to center, particularly when you consider that LeBron, no matter where he is technically listed position-wise, he functions more like a guard than a big. Just that's how LeBron plays. I think Jarred Vanderbilt's skill set is needed more than Christian Wood's scoring, and I realize that Christian Wood could spell Anthony Davis or fill in with him out, but as we saw with Thomas Bryant, who was a revelation last year as a scorer when AD was out, there are limits to the success and sustainability to that setup when you are a decided defensive liability. And Thomas Bryant is a better defender than Christian Wood. I think if you have to choose between the two, he's better.
Yes, I think that's true, but Christian Wood is a better offensive player than Thomas Bryant.
He you know what?
By a pretty wide margin.
But I don't think, though, that given what Thomas Bryant did during that period when AD was out, I doubt Christian Wood would be much more productive than Thomas Bryant.
I don't know. You could look at the numbers. I think if you broke down the way the offense would operate, using Wood as a weapon as opposed to the way they use Bryant, I think he would be more impactful in that way. But I tend to agree with you, but I will argue for, I think there is a very legitimate devil's advocate position to that, the sort of the counter to it, because my initial reaction was, no, I'm not doing that. And it is based as much on sort of the atmosphere, for lack of a better term, the aura.
For what it's worth, really quickly, for what it's worth, Thomas Bryant last year as a starter, 26 minutes a game, 14-8.
Mm-hmm.
So
again,
I don't picture Christian Wood being a hell of a lot more productive than that.
I don't know if the numbers themselves would look way different, but I think how the numbers would get created in the impact, the sort of the effect on the offense as a whole, particularly when Anthony Davis doesn't play, like I said, I think would be different, and he would have a role next to AD. But it's okay. So I'll get into the reasons why I think this could be something you would do, and we can kind of carry it through after the break. The first thing is just talking about Christian Wood. Like I said, most of my reasons for not wanting to do it, it's like I love the idea of Christian Wood on a minimum, like especially if you end up signing it like another big as well, like kind of do too, maybe a guy on a non-guaranteed contract or whatever. I think that might be an experiment worth doing. I don't love the fact that nobody is willing to kind of put $4 million on the table to just take the guy when he's sitting there and he's bounced around. Like, all of those things are gigantic red flags to wave around. If you want to take the positive end of things, though, from Wood's standpoint, I think there's the offensive boost, obviously, which is tangible. I think his fit with Anthony Davis could be pretty good. Like when Davis is, when AD is available, and you talk about LeBron as a functioning as a guard, which is true offensively, but defensively, we had this whole conversation last week where the idea of LeBron, if you start a Jackson Hayes or Christian Wood or whoever you bring in, you're bumping LeBron to the 3, which is not a great idea. Defensively, he functions more as a 4. So what this really gets to me is kind of a referendum on exactly what you think Vanderbilt is going to be for this team next year. And my answer to that question is I think he's going to be a few different things. And depending on which one you value most is the thing that says, would you include him in a trade for somebody like Christian Wood? So I'll break that down next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by PrizePicks, and Laker fans, if you haven't signed up yet for PrizePicks, you are missing out on daily fantasy made easy. PrizePicks has the best DFS prop game on the market. They offer more props than any other DFS prop operator. The superstar players, the bench players, just pick 2 to 6 players and predict whether they will notch more or less in the PrizePicks stats projections, and you can win up to 25 times your money. And PrizePicks offers projections on everything: the big 4 sports, WNBA, golf, cricket. If you're a Dodger fan listening right now, you can predict whether Mookie Betts or Freddie Freeman will end up with more or less of a fantasy score than 8.5 Monday against the Orioles. Get 3 points per single, 5 points for a double, 2 points for runs scored, 2 points for a walk earned. Just use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. Safe, fast withdrawals. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com. Sign up, play daily fantasy sports, and first-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 using the promo code Locked On. Again, don't forget the promo code Locked On at the sign up for the instant match. If you're not playing PrizePicks, you don't know what you're missing.
So, like I said, I think this question is really based on, like, what do you really think his role is going to be on the Lakers next year? And I am not 100%, particularly if he doesn't end up starting. A lot of people think Ruiz.
He being Jarred Vanderbilt.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, he being Vanderbilt. If you think Hachimura is going to start and get sort of those starters minutes, and you think AD is going to play the 5 mostly, and you, like I think Taurean Prince is going to get a decent chunk of minutes and all that stuff. I don't know how much, at least when people are healthy, I could see scenarios in which Vanderbilt gets a little squeezed. If you look, for example, at the playoffs, his minutes as the playoffs went down significantly, especially after that, that big game 1 where he was sort of on Steph and kind of screwed up their offense, and it was really successful. After that, it went 20, 15, 11, 11, 4. And against Denver, he played 10, 17, 4, and DNP. So, that was, so if you think, Taurean Prince is going to be a big part of the rotation, and I kind of do. And if you think Max Christie is going to kind of horn his way into the rotation, and I think he will, that squeezes, moves people down. I think that squeezes Vanderbilt a little bit too. I can see a scenario where Wood would have more utility than Vanderbilt would. And that is at least a reason, I think, to look at something like that, where you would say, oh, okay, that might be something that's worth doing. Reaction to that, and then I'll tell you my counterpoint to that point and why I think Vanderbilt is valuable and is going to be really needed.
Scenario you're talking about, I don't think is a non-0% chance of happening, but I also think it could also just as easily lead to Christian Wood finding minutes, getting squeezed, and not having that much availability either, because if all those guys are getting a lot of minutes, there won't be a ton to go around for Christian Wood either. The difference being Christian Wood would only just add more scoring that they theoretically already have, as opposed to Jarred Vanderbilt, who he's a more versatile defender than Taurean Prince. And I think he's probably just he's a better defender than Taurean Prince, period. I think he can guard a wider variety of players than Prince. I also think, and I know we talked about this during the playoffs, I think Vanderbilt getting played off the court was more a function of D'Angelo Russell not hitting shots, Dennis Schroeder not hitting shots, one game against Golden State aside, Lonnie Walker not hitting shots, than anything Vanderbilt was really doing wrong. Vanderbilt's not out there to hit shots. He's out there to defend, to hustle, to rebound, things like that. If those other guys actually do their jobs better, I don't think Vanderbilt actually gets played off the floor. And to be clear, they needed to take him off the floor. I'm not arguing with Darvin taking him off the floor, but I thought then, I said it then, and I still think it now, that was more a function of failure by the other guys than Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was doing his job.
Yes, and I think yes, I agree. But when you look at this stuff, this is why I think Vanderbilt is so interesting, because he is everything you want in a player, sort of attitudinally. He works his ass off all the time. He is a true team guy. He will do what he is asked to do. He's not, he will, whatever the game plan is, he will try his best to meet it and all that other stuff. But when you start to break down, and I think, a lot of the people we follow and, guys who are really good at this kind of breakdown of not just is a guy an aggressive defender, but like what kind of defender is he? Where does he excel? Where doesn't he excel? I think, and when we went back to our scouting report on Vanderbilt after the trade, this was a lot of the stuff that was pointed out. It's that, like, you look up, like, you watch him play and the effort is so there and you like the guy so much that I think sometimes the actual efficacy of what he's doing isn't as strong as the input that he's giving. And I think there are places where he can be used very effectively, and there are places where he is not nearly as effective. And so I agree with you. He's got some versatility. He's got a lot of he's got value and stuff like that. But I don't agree with the idea that he's sort of a universally effective defender. I think there are certain things he's very good at, and it seems like statistically certain things that he's not. So that's part of my kind of opinion. Like, worry is like, I don't, in the right situation, I don't entirely agree with you that the lack of shooting is it is a reason they had to take him off before. I don't know if it is the reason, because I think there was.
I think it's the biggest reason. I mean,
I also think there were defensive issues in how Golden State changed the way that they were operating their offense that made Vanderbilt more vulnerable. The second part of that is their shooting isn't any better this year than it was last year. I don't think you add Prince, that helps, but Gabe Vincent isn't a better shooter than Dennis Schroeder.
If you believe,
I need to see him do that. Sure. I need to see him do that through a regular season.
Right. Well, theoretically, D'Angelo Russell is a much better outside shooter than he was in the playoffs.
Russell should have been shooting better. But the flip side is Hachimura is not going to do in the regular season probably what he did in the playoffs. So like there's a trade. The Lakers are not a great outside shooting team. I think that I don't, until they show me they're better. I'm just not buying it. The real value I think Vanderbilt has is, and we've talked about this a lot, and I think everydayers are going to hear us continue to talk about it because it's really important. Vanderbilt is a great innings eater, and the Lakers are going to. Vanderbilt is very valuable on a team like this to get through 82 games because he's reasonably durable. He plays very hard. He's going to bring you energy to the middle months of the season when it can be a challenge to kind of keep cranking things up, or you need to let LeBron have rest. He's going to be somebody who brings elevates the energy level and the effort level on the team in the fourth game in 5 nights on the road. Like that is really important and incredibly valuable. And it's sort of like I feel like him about I did Russell. It's like, okay, maybe there are vulnerabilities when you get to the playoffs where you say, okay, you can't count on him, but that's okay because the 82 games are really important also. That to me is the best reason to hold on to somebody like him. Although I have to say, broadly speaking, if something comes up where I think I get real future value for trading Vanderbilt, I would do it because I am not sure I want to pay him next year.
Well, I mean,
I don't know what he's going to cost, but $4 million Jarred Vanderbilt, I like a lot. $12 million, $9 million, $10 million Jarred Vanderbilt, I don't actually like nearly.
I don't know. I mean, we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Sure.
I think the value that you get with Jarred Vanderbilt can be, if nothing else, harder to find on this roster than the value you would get from Christian Wood. I think Christian Wood is more easily replicated. He is, by definition, been pretty expendable because no team he's ever on seems to want to keep him around for more than a year or so.
That's the flag. That is the red flag.
As far as what he does, how it translates in the playoffs, I have no idea. He's never been.
Mm-hmm.
He's never actually gone to the playoffs.
Oh, so I could see. I mean, he could be hard to play in the playoffs as well. Again, this is to me is less about Wood and really got me thinking about Vanderbilt. I will say Lakers Twitter was, and maybe we'll put up a poll, on the thing. We can talk about the results on Tuesday, see what you guys think. It was overwhelmingly against this sort of idea, and I get it, and I probably wouldn't do it either when it comes down to it. But it really got me thinking about Vanderbilt specifically and where he fits in on this team. How many minutes is he really going to play? And all that stuff. Again, he's a $4.5 million guy. So there's no harm, no foul if you go through stretches where Vanderbilt's playing 11 or 12 minutes a game, and then you need him for a week to play 23 or 24, 25, whatever. Totally fine. He's going to do it, and he'll give you full effort, and he's not going to pout. And again, super valuable. But it got me really thinking about the larger construction of where he fits in on this team and how he might get squeezed, which, by the way, is a good thing because it means Prince is playing well, and it particularly means Max Christie is playing well. So anyway, we can keep kind of talking about it, unpacking. We'll get your reaction to this and what you think about. Again, don't bury Sam Quinn. A thought exercise on how the Lakers could trade for Christian Wood.
Again, he's bringing this up because the Lakers have been linked to Christian Wood, and if it's not moving Vanderbilt, it's basically a non-issue unless Wood ultimately agrees to a veterans minimum. There is no other route. There is no other way,
and the
for
Lakers,
all intents and purposes,
correct. And the Lakers, like everybody else, are hoping to just get him on a veterans minimum because that's where you get the most potential value with the least amount of risk. Darvin Ham had some high praise for Austin Reaves. We'll get to it next. All right. So before we get to Austin Reaves, if you missed the news, LeBron James is going to go back to 23. He's going to give up 6 and go back to 23, really just to honor the retirement, the league-wide number retirement for Bill Russell. I wasn't at all surprised. Really couldn't do it last year. There wasn't enough time. There are rules about this sort of thing, but to go back to it this year makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like last season he wanted to keep wearing it in part to honor Bill Russell and then wanted to switch out of it again to honor Russell. So either way, he'll be going back to that familiar 23, brand new jersey for folks to buy. Everybody wins.
Or if you were like annoyed and you still have your 23, now you get to wear it again without feeling like you're out of date.
And everybody wins, and Bill Russell rightly gets honored.
So yeah, I mean, it would have been strange if he switched to like 58 or something, where then we'd have to have a conversation. All right, so Austin Reaves became a major fan favorite and broke through in a huge way, particularly once he was put into the starting lineup and moved into the playoffs. We talked a lot about on last week the podcast that Darvin Ham appeared on, hashtag This League Uncut, with Chris Haynes and Mark Stein. He was talking about Austin Reaves, and he said this: "I'm putting it on record right now. Austin Reaves will be an all-star at some point soon. I think what you saw with him being invited to be a part of the World Cup team is the first step in that direction. Everything you saw him do last year, the kid is a flat-out competitor, one of the greatest human beings you could ever be around. My plan is to continue to feature him. He's our starting 2-guard. And I think there's a lot more levels he's going to get to before it's all said and done." That was pretty high praise.
Yeah. And look, Austin Reaves has had really consistent improvement and progress since entering the league. You saw from the beginning of last year season to this year's season, the beginning of his rookie season to the end of his rookie season. And last year, like post All-Star break, and, you know, small size theater, but a lot of this is just once Russell Westbrook was moved and Austin Reaves could do a lot more. His numbers were 17.6 points per game, 3 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 58% from the field, 44% from behind the arc during the playoffs. His numbers went down a little bit, but you know, in the playoffs, your numbers often go down, particularly the amount of rounds you go, because the opponents get tougher, the scouting gets more difficult, guys get more tired.
They're really tired, right?
But they were still relatively consistent. Are those numbers that can definitively get him into an all-star game? No. But they are numbers that, if consistent or maybe improved upon a bit, could get him in a conversation.
It's also really hard. Game. It's really hard to be the third guy on a team and get in.
Yeah.
That's also really hard.
Your team needs to be a front runner.
Right. And the Lakers, in theory, ought to be next year. It is, you know, if the Lakers are really cooking next year, it is not inconceivable that they could have 3 all-stars. I was intrigued by that. You know, I thought, you know, and I think there's also too, there are guys who are all-star caliber who do not make all-star games. Mike Conley, for most of his career, has been an all-star caliber player. Not so much anymore, but when he was, you know, certainly in his prime, was an all-star caliber player who never made all-star teams. Drew Holiday has made, I think, 2 now, but went a decade between them and was all-star caliber, to say the least, for many of those seasons. It's just, they're small rosters. Side note, I think the NBA needs to expand their all-star rosters. That's a separate thing.
So do I.
I was intrigued too by his emphasis. I think the World Cup thing is going to be fantastic for Reaves. I think he's going to play a ton on that team. because coaches are going to want to put him in the game for all the same reasons Darvin Ham does.
Yeah, I took a look at that just in terms of trying to frame what that means for Austin Reaves, both as an honor, and you talked about it, just he's going to have a lot of responsibility. I think he should get a lot of minutes. He's somebody that can blend with whatever combination of players you want to put on the floor. But I also started thinking about it just in terms of trajectory and like the caliber of player that often is involved with something like this. So I took a look at the 2019 squad, and it was Derek White, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Joe Harris, Marcus Smart, Harrison Barnes, Mason Plumlee, Miles Turner, Brook Lopez, Chris Middleton, Kemba Walker. There were some guys who could have been involved. I think Kyle Lowry got injured, and there were guys who got asked, declined it, whatever. But then
World Cup, for people that just don't pay attention, it's like it is a more of a feeder roster for Team USA. Still really good players, but you don't get the top tier, the Durant's, right. LeBron, guys like that.
But then I was looking at it. Jason Tatum, All-NBA player. Jaylen Brown, All-NBA player. Donovan Mitchell, All-NBA player. Marcus Smart, Defensive Player of the Year. Harrison Barnes, starter on a championship team. Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, All-Stars and starters on a championship team. Miles Turner, Defensive Player of the Year caliber player. Derek White, All-Defense of this past season. He was All-NBA defense. Then I looked at this year's squad. Paolo Banchero, Anthony Edwards, Mikal Bridges, Jalen Brunson, Tyrese Halliburton, Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram, Bobby Portis, Jaren Jackson Jr., Cam Johnson, Walker Kessler, Austin Reaves. You've got obviously the Rookie of the Year in Paolo Banchero. You've got Edwards and Halliburton, who were all-stars. Brandon Ingram's been an all-star and most improved player of the year. Mikal Bridges looks like he could be an all-star with his career setting up in Brooklyn. Jaren Jackson Jr., reigning Defensive Player of the Year. Jalen Brunson could be an all-star soon. This is pretty good company that Austin Reaves is a part of. Like, if you are considered worthy of playing with these guys, is it the same thing as playing with the Olympic team that, Kobe led to the victory over Spain? No, but it's a pretty damn good group of players.
This is not a team that you just get to just like show up. This is not your run at the LA Fitness where you can, I got next.
And it to the point you made earlier, it speaks to, I think, not just the way Darvin thinks of Austin Reaves, but the perception of Reaves around the league and just in basketball in general.
Yeah, and again, I don't know. I don't pay super close attention to international basketball, but would it surprise me if Reaves initially isn't a starter? No, it wouldn't. But I think by the end of the tournament, he's going to be playing a lot because he is a guy, and this actually to some degree works against him in making an all-star team. But like he is a person who elevates the quality of the people you put around him. I think he's a perfect guy for this kind of team. I think Josh Hart is a great addition to this team, who's also playing a lot because they are not high usage players. And Reaves in particular has become a pretty talented scorer. I don't know if the stuff he does in terms of getting the line and the way he does things works in international basketball as effectively. I don't know how they call games and all that, but he just, he's sort of thinking about it going back and forth to the NBA. He's just really good. And he does almost everything well. And he doesn't have a lot of holes. And maybe it was sort of Chris Middleton-ish in that way. Like maybe he's not outstanding at any one thing, although he's developing into an outstanding guy, in terms of drawing contact and getting the line. But maybe he's not outstanding at everything or any one thing. But being really good at everything with very few reasons, we talked about Vanderbilt earlier in the show. Like Jarred Vanderbilt has a couple really strong skills, but has gaping holes in his game. There are a lot of guys who have those big holes that are easily exploitable. And, D'Angelo Russell, who has been an all-star, has holes in his game that are easy to exploit or can be exploited. Reaves doesn't really have that. And especially since he can play a couple different positions and all that. Is he going to make an all-star team? I don't know. Is he going to be an all-star caliber player? I don't know. But I can tell you the third year of that contract he's going to be on, I am 100% willing to bet a significant amount of money will be one of the 2 or 3 biggest bargains in the NBA in that season. Yeah. All right. We'll maybe talk a little bit more about this. We'll also, Summer League finished up on Sunday. Interesting weekend for the Lakers. So we'll kind of grade out the rest of the Summer League. and get that done. And lots of
we have a
stuff
scouting
coming up
report of Gabe Vincent coming up too.
Yes, that as well. So that's something to look forward to for the everydayers. We encourage you to become one of those if you are not already. Locked On Lakers on YouTube, so we can go see the show, hang out with a bunch of awesome Lakers fans, and we will see everybody on Tuesday.